Well, hello everybody. Welcome into this Adobe Photoshop tutorial. My name is Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com, and today we're going to take a look at how to read a histogram. There's not really much else to say about it. It's just super duper important, and if you enjoy the video, it'd be super cool if you would subscribe and hit the little bell icon to turn those notifications on. Let's jump over into Photoshop right now and check this thing out. All right, so here we are in Adobe Photoshop, and let's just cut through some of the talking and start looking at examples of how the histogram works. We're going to try to knife our way through this real quick here. So it begins with opening the histogram palette or panel, I should say, in Photoshop. Now, the histogram is not brand loyal to Photoshop. It's really all over the place. You're going to have histograms in places like Premiere and DaVinci Resolve. You have them in Camera Raw Editor and Lightroom. They're all over the place. They're on the back of your camera, for crying out loud, and they all work the same. So understanding how to read them, or at least what you're looking at here, can be really, really helpful. Now, this looks like a pretty complex histogram because we have all kinds of stuff going on here in the photo. Basically, here's how you can think about a histogram. It works like this. You have very dark stuff over here on the left and very bright stuff on the right. And everything in between is dark stuff, dark, 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 kind of middle tone, getting brighter, 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 solid white. That's kind of, if you looked at a histogram, that's what you're looking at here. So what this histogram is telling me is there's really not a lot of super dark stuff in this image. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of in the, we're getting pretty dark range, and I can kind of tell that because of all the mossy green stuff on the side of this hill and things like that. And then it's kind of a lot going on in the midtones and just slightly brighter than midtones. Then it kind of calms down a little bit, and there are a couple really bright highlights, which of course I know because we got the sun piercing through the sky there. So let's take a look at how to affect the histogram. I'm going to add a curves adjustment here. And notice, by the way, for curves, you have a histogram behind your curve, and it mimics exactly the histogram here. It's a little bit taller, but it's the same shape, right? You can see it's all the same. So if I say, you know what, I want to make the image brighter, I'm just going to drag a point anywhere and pull straight up. And you can see as I make the image brighter, what happens? Oh, the whole histogram shifts very harshly, very hard, pulls a hard right turn right there to the right side of the histogram. I'm going to hit the little double arrow turny thing. That's going to give me the most updated histogram possible. You can see we've made the image a whole lot brighter, and the opposite would happen, obviously, if I make the image a whole lot darker. A lot of stuff gets slid over there to the left, and we just have a really, really dark photo. So it can be a quick way to tell if you're out in the field, did I underexpose that shot? Well, if your histogram looks anything like that, or even if it looks like that, or that, it's probably a little underexposed. When you're getting something that's more in the center, you're probably more around where you want to be, and sure enough, look at the photo. It still looks pretty pleasing. If we shut it off, it's bright, but it almost looks a little too bright. Like this, according to the histogram, is a little bit more of a balanced exposure, if you will, where we have good balance, nothing is totally blown out. If we have a huge spike on the left, it means you've got black somewhere that's just no detail left, and if you have a huge spike on the right, it means you got white, highlights are being blown out, there's no detail. And actually, let me just show that to you. So if I drag out a big box here and I fill it with black, deselect, you can see we've got that line. Boom. Absolute darkest stuff in the image, and there's no detail. It's completely blown out. And if I drag out a big spot here and fill it with white, you can see we get the same thing over here. It's a slightly thicker line, but the same principle holds true. It shoots all the way up to the top, and sure enough, in this big patch of white, if that was the sky in a photo of ours, we'd have absolutely no detail there. I'm going to delete that layer, and the histogram kind of is restored to order a little bit. I'm going to delete the curves adjustment layer as well. Let's go to this photo of San Francisco. Now, you can see right off the bat, the photo is predominantly dark, and sure enough, our histogram kind of tells us that. It says, look, there's something here that there's a spike of brightness, which, yeah, sure, we can see that in the setting sun, but aside from that, it's a very dark image. And if I add something like a color lookup table and we go with the drop blues here just to give it more of like a post-apocalyptic thing, having some trouble speaking today, and I set this to something like multiply to really darken it up even more, you can see that we're losing a ton of detail in the absolute darkest areas, and that's probably stuff like down here at the base of this building, right over here, down here on these streets, these trees, all kinds of areas that are essentially solid, super dark gray and solid black. And the histogram lets us know, so I can say, you know what, I like that, but I want to back this off so I preserve some of that detail, something maybe a little bit more like that, and I can see a quick before and after. And then lastly, over here, we have an image that's predominantly light. I'll update my histogram here to get the most up-to-date look at what we've got. And sure enough, yeah, there's a lot of white going on here. Snow is very bright. It's a photo probably shot in the noonday sun. And our histogram is going to reflect exactly what you see in the photo. So maybe you don't want it to be quite this bright. All right, let's throw a levels adjustment on here. And by the way, take note, levels also gives you that histogram. And maybe you're looking at it and saying, look, this really bright spike, right, where it's super duper bright, almost solid white. I want to kind of tone that down a little bit. So I can use the output sliders for that. I can say, look, take the white point and push it back a little bit. And you can see what happens. essentially the histogram from, this point all the way to the very brightest is being cleared out. So those solid whites are being completely flattened. It almost makes the snow look gray, right? You can see how the snow has kind of that nice crisp whiteness, and then we flatten it and say, nope, you're not allowed to go past level 232. You're going to get this flattened tone. Now, this actually gives me the opportunity to explain something here. The histogram runs from 0, the far left is 0, and 0 is total black, and 255 is total white. And sure enough, this is why Levels has these numbers here. 0 on this side, total black, and 255 on this side, which of course is total white. And then any number in between is, over here might be 200, and this might be, 85, and so on and so forth. And you can just think of it as a level of brightness. So if you drag the output of black up to 100, the darkest any pixel in the photo can get is 100 in terms of its darkest possible darkness, if that makes sense. Out of a scale of 0 to 255, 100 is the darkest that this image will be allowed to get for any layer that is beneath the Levels adjustment layer here. So a lot of really interesting stuff. And the last thing I just want to show you is if I open up this image in the Camera Raw editor, Command-Shift-A, that would be Control-Shift-A on the PC. We have a histogram up here in the top corner. You got one of these in Lightroom. Like I said, they're all over the place. You're going to see them everywhere. And this is a really intuitive way to play around with your histogram, because here when you hover over any part of the histogram, it tells you, look, there's the exposure, there are the highlights, there are the whites. And sure enough, exposure, shadows, and blacks. So we can say, look, we want our shadows actually to be a little bit darker. So I can drag this toward the left a little, and it's going to make all those shadows a little darker. It's going to infuse a little more contrast into the photo. We can say maybe those whites are a little bit too bright. We want to pull them down a little bit, and we also want to pull the highlights down a little bit, and maybe we overall want to pull the exposure down a little bit. That's pretty cool. I can hit OK. And it's just a really intuitive way of working with the histogram and just learning a little bit more about it. Now, just so you know, here in Photoshop, there's a bit you can do with the histogram panel. You get your flyout menu. You can show an all channels view, which will show you your red, green, and blue channels. This is an RGB image, so you have a red, green, and blue channel. They all have individual histograms where you can see how the red is being mapped and the blue and the green are being mapped. That would be a whole different tutorial in terms of getting into how to work with color and individual channels. Probably something that I should do. You can pull up those channels as individual histograms here. You got your luminosity, which don't be fooled. Luminosity is going to look a little bit different than your composite RGB, so make sure you're working with your RGB. And then you also have colors, which I almost never use because it's just a little bit too much going on here for me. But sometimes it can be useful, especially if you're looking to like line up the greens and the reds. You can just visibly watch as they kind of pull together as you're playing with color channels. But again, that's a whole different ball game that I'm not going to get into right here. So you have your expanded and compact view. I almost always work in expanded view. You can show all these statistics, all this junk down here. Okay, expanded view is what I like to work in. And the last thing, you can select a part of your photo. So I can like grab the snow out here, and it'll create a histogram for just the pixels within that selection. So I can say, yep, a lot of brightness within that selection. Whereas if I go over here and select like the trees on the side of the mountain, well, noticeably darker, and for good reason, because it's just a lot of dark pixels. Same thing here. If I go with the side of this tree, a lot of dark stuff where the tree is, and then it gets bright because I picked up some bits of snow as well. So a lot of really, really cool stuff you can do with the histogram specifically in Photoshop, but just understanding what the histogram is telling you is going to be so incredibly useful and helpful for you in pretty much every aspect of what you're doing if you're doing any kind of photo or video, anything. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the histogram. As you can see, very useful, whether you're just in Photoshop or whether you're in Lightroom or the Camera Raw editor, or you're doing color grading, or you're actually out on a shoot and you see the histogram on the back of your camera or video camera monitor, wherever it is, it's incredibly useful to at least have an idea of what you're looking at when you see that strange thing we call the histogram pop up there on any screen that you happen to be looking at. If you enjoyed this video, again, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you really enjoyed the video, consider supporting the channel. Pick up a copy of my Photoshop course. It's all about how to retouch images in Photoshop. I think you'll really like it, and it helps support what we do here at tutvid.com. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me over on Instagram at tutvid. I'm giving you like 5,000 things to do here. Why am I doing that? But also, if you're into Discord, last but not least, discord.me/tutvid, where the conversation continues on and on and on. You can check it all out. Links are down in the bio for all that stuff and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, for checking out the histogram and what it means, and the left and the right, and the darks and the midtones and the brights and everything in between, that's it. Got it good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.